Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are undertaking a pretty critical mission. We're pulling back the curtain on one of the most essential yet often invisible networks that really forms the bedrock of modern social welfare across the European continent.
Yeah, that's right.
We are diving deep into the intricate operations of the European Association of Urban Missions.
Which you'll sometimes see called by its acronym EAUM.
Right, or in the sphere where it holds enormous institutional weight, the Arbeitsgemeinschaft Europäischer Stadtmissionen, or just AGS.
And the goal here for you, the listener, is to get a really well-informed shortcut into this world. We need to look beyond the simple, almost romanticized idea of these faith-based organizations just offering basic charity. Because what the evidence and all the sources clearly show is a highly sophisticated, financially massive, and politically essential network. These are contracted partners to national and regional European governments.
They're not peripheral.
Not at all. They are the infrastructure.
That's the key insight we want to deliver. I mean, these missions are on the front line, grappling with the continent's most challenging issues, from refugee integration and complex geopolitical crises, all the way to the rapidly escalating youth mental health emergency.
And the diversity within this EAUM network is staggering. It's a huge part of the story.
So it's not just one type of organization.
Absolutely not.
Oh, no.
We're looking at a vast financial and operational dichotomy. I mean, on one side, you have these historic multi-million euro service giants, organizations that, frankly, function as quasi-public contractors.
Employing thousands of staff.
Thousands. And operating hospitals, things like that. Then, on the other end of the spectrum, the network also includes these small localized foundations, often funded by, a handful of local parishes or just private donors.
So understanding this range from a major national institution to a local soup kitchen is crucial to grasping the EAUM's continental influence.
It is. It's everything.
And what's fascinating here, and this is where our work really started, is that to even begin this analysis, we had to employ an extremely rigorous methodological step, specifically around verification and what's called decambiguation.
Oh, yeah, this was critical.
Because these organizations share similar, sometimes identical, historical names that go all the way back to the 19th century. You can't just Google city mission and assume you have the right entity.
Especially not the one responsible for a multi-million euro government contract. You just can't.
So that rigor is necessary because we're tracing money and policy influence, not just, broad religious movements.
That's exactly right. And our sources highlighted several perfect examples of why we needed this painstaking verification process.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit because this detail shows you how deep we had to go into the data. If you, right now, search for the Berlin City Mission, you'll likely find several different entities. You might first find something called Mission Berlin, which we identified as being focused purely on, evangelical conferences and revival events, a totally distinct entity.
Or you might find the Berliner Missions Work.
Right, which is a traditional, distinct, historical foreign missionary society that sends workers abroad. Again, not what we're looking for.
But the organization that is actually the key player within the EAUM, the one presenting at the conferences, with that deep history of serving the homeless and fighting poverty that dates all the way back to 1877.
The one running the massive shelters and services in the city today.
Is the Berliner Stadtmission. And we had to cross-reference the specific speakers, the official organizational registration, their detailed operational activities, just to confirm that one single entity.
And the risk of error, it goes even further. It extends to confusing these nonprofits with completely unrelated massive corporations.
It does.
Take the Heidelberg City Mission. If you search that specific German phrase, you might unintentionally find the massive multinational building materials company, Heidelberg Materials.
Which obviously would skew any financial analysis immediately. So we needed to be meticulous to ensure we were analyzing the correct entity. The Evangelist Stadtmission Heidelberg e.V., the one that operates extensive social services, runs 2 hospitals, and provides addiction support.
Consistent with the broader urban mission model.
Exactly. This level of detail shows that we are looking at specific service providers, not just broad evangelical movements or, unrelated corporations.
I see. So the painstaking verification step like identifying the Mission Evangelica Urbana de Valencia, MEUV, in Spain, versus the Public Visit Valencia Foundation. That's fundamental.
It is.
It establishes that the financial and strategic data we are about to discuss is accurate and pertains to the genuine welfare providers that partner with the state.
Absolutely. The rigor of that data analysis is what allows us to move from historical anecdote to, genuine financial and strategic insight.
And that attention to detail, it takes us right into the historical roots of this whole movement.
Oh,
So
okay.
let's unpack the history. This city mission movement, as we noted, it long predates the formal EAUM association by nearly 2 centuries.
It does.
This wasn't a governmental policy idea. This was a direct, bottom-up response to a profound social catastrophe.
And that catastrophe, of course, was the rapid destabilizing rise of the Industrial Revolution in the early 19th century.
Right.
The genesis of the city mission movement is historically placed in Glasgow in 1826. It was established by a lay preacher named David Naismith. And Naismith recognized a critical, massive societal gap.
What was the gap? What was he seeing?
He was seeing that the established institutional churches of the time, the Church of Scotland, the Anglican Church, they were utterly failing to serve the rapidly expanding, impoverished urban working class.
How so?
Well, their systems of pew rents and rigid parish boundaries, they were structured for a rural, stable landowning society, not for the crowded, fluid, and often anarchic industrial centers.
So the poor just weren't being reached.
They weren't being reached at all by the traditional religious institutions.
So Naismith's model wasn't just charity. It was really a prototype for modern coordinated social action. It was fundamentally interdenominational, recruiting lay people from all these different churches. So what was the core innovation?
The core innovation was the practice of home visitation. So the missionaries and volunteers, they didn't wait for people to come to them in a church. They went into the crowded, disease-ridden tenements and slums.
They went to where the people were.
Exactly. And this practice combined material assistance, identifying needs for food, medicine, shelter, with spiritual support. This holistic approach, going to the client rather than expecting the client to come to the institution, is widely recognized as a precursor to modern professional social work.
It established a kind of DNA of bridging that physical and spiritual divide that industrialization had created.
It did, and this model proved to be incredibly successful and portable, which is why it's basically the genetic code of the EAUM today.
It just took off.
Like wildfire. London's City Mission was founded in 1835. By the 1850s and 70s, it had reached the continent. Stockholm's Stads Mission in 1853 and the Berliner Steppe Mission in 1877. This established the foundational structure, large, urban-focused, interdenominational service providers.
But then the movement hit a massive political and ideological wall.
It did, the Iron Curtain.
Right.
And for roughly 5 decades, the development trajectory just split completely. Western missions, particularly in Germany and Sweden, they became highly professionalized and deeply integrated into the emerging welfare states. They became service contractors.
Meanwhile, in the East,
missions in Eastern Europe struggled immensely under communist regimes. They were often operating secretly or just, existing in the margins.
So the EAUM's formalization in the 1990s was, therefore, a direct response to that geopolitical shift after the Berlin Wall fell.
It was. It was a necessary vehicle to bridge that historical divide. The association's primary early function was really facilitating the transfer of operational knowledge, administrative structures, and resources from the professionalized West to the struggling missions that were now rebuilding civil society in the post-communist East.
Like in Poland and the Czech Republic.
Precisely.
And what defines the EAUM network today isn't just one function, but a crucial dual mandate. It's not simply a religious conference circuit, and it's not purely a secular NGO trade show. It's both.
Exactly. The first function is professional exchange. That's the practical side. This is where high-level administrators, social workers, and financial managers meet to compare specific, measurable methodologies.
So we're talking about the nuts and bolts.
The real technical details. In areas like addiction recovery, innovative housing-first models for chronic homelessness, effective youth work strategies, they operate on the assumption that a social challenge in Riga is structurally comparable to one in Lisbon, and therefore solutions are transferable.
But the second function, which I think often gets missed in any external analysis, is the spiritual fortification.
Yes. And this mandate provides a vital space for mutual encouragement, shared worship, and reinforcing the distinct Christian identity of their work. They are acutely self-aware that they're operating in increasingly pluralistic and, secular societies.
So that shared identity is a motivator.
It's a deep wellspring of motivation. It sustains the staff in difficult, often emotionally draining work, and it provides a cohesive mission when external funding pressures might push them toward purely secular goals.
And if we connect this dual mission to their governance, it's reflected in their deliberate structure. The EAUM uses a very lean, federated model.
Right. It's intentionally designed to avoid creating a massive bureaucratic European headquarters that might stifle that local flexibility.
So the core direction rests with the governing board.
Correct. Currently composed of 7 members, and its composition is basically a deliberate strategic map of the different social traditions in Europe.
Okay, tell me more about that balance. What national traditions are intentionally represented there, and why?
Well, you see a really precise balance built into the structure. You have a representative from Great Britain to anchor the Anglo-Saxon, heavily voluntarist tradition, which focuses heavily on private fundraising and community mobilization.
Okay.
Then a key voice comes from Sweden, representing the high professionalization and state integration characteristic of the Nordic welfare model. They often lead the way in innovation like housing first.
That makes sense. And what about the context we mentioned earlier, the post-communist ones?
Crucially, they include a member from the Czech Republic to ensure that post-communist context, the ongoing challenges of rebuilding civil society, wrestling with massive geopolitical shifts, is actively addressed at the board level.
And then there's Germany.
Right. They dedicate 2 seats to Germany, and that's because the German Stadtmission are just such massive institutional players within the Diakony system. They represent a uniquely corporatist model of service delivery. They also have representation from Spain and Switzerland to ensure that geographic breadth.
Okay, let's pause on that term diacony. We need to explain that because for a listener unfamiliar with the German system, it sounds like just another organization, but it's actually a vast operational framework, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Diatony is the official German term for the welfare work of the Protestant churches. In Germany, you have the church tax system,
Where citizens can designate a portion of their income tax to their registered religious community.
exactly. And this creates an incredibly stable, massive funding source. And this allows diachrony organizations, including the German city missions, to operate as trusted quasi-state partners for social service delivery. They are intrinsic to the German welfare system.
Here's why the German missions are such massive corporatist giants.
Precisely. They are professionalized contractors, underpinned by a guaranteed funding stream.
I see. That clarifies why they need 2 seats on the board. And the cornerstone of this entire lean model, as you mentioned, is the functional staff exchange program.
Yes. The association notes that these exchanges, where frontline social workers, not just high-level managers, shadow their counterparts for weeks, have proven to stimulate, envision, and even create new projects.
So it's a very organic, efficient way to transfer knowledge.
Extremely. It avoids relying solely on slow policy papers or academic research. For example, the highly effective housing first models developed by the Scandinavian partners get disseminated directly to smaller Eastern European missions through these visits.
And finally, that lean governance is reinforced by the rotational secretariat. They don't have a giant, expensive EU headquarters in Brussels constantly absorbing resources.
Correct. The administrative hub is deliberately rotational. It keeps overheads low and ensures that ownership of the network circulates. Recently, the administration has been anchored in Roka, Poland.
Tied to the local organizing committee for the 2025 conference.
Right. And this isn't a random choice. Roka is geographically positioned to maximize input from that crucial post-communist context while still being highly accessible to the professionalized Western partners. It's a strategically central point of convergence.
That organizational efficiency is impressive, and it enables them to handle massive resources. So here's where it gets really interesting. The money. Because the financial profiles of these members show just how vast the disparity in operational scale truly is.
This is truly a sector of financial extremes. I mean, at one end, you have organizations that operate with the financial muscle and complexity of a large, mid-sized corporation.
Acting essentially as quasi-public service providers.
Yeah. And at the other, you have small foundations relying on neighborhood fundraising.
So let's look at the financial titans first, because their budgets are just staggering. In Sweden, the Stockholm's Stadsmission is a financial powerhouse. Its revenue was cited in a 2023 report at 620 million Swedish kroner.
Which translates to approximately 52.3 million. And to put that figure in perspective for our listeners, 52.3 million is an annual budget larger than the entire municipal budget of many smaller cities in Europe.
So that immediately places them as a major, high-level professional nonprofit actor in the Swedish social safety net.
Absolutely. Capable of delivering services at scale.
And across Central Europe, we see similar financial capacity, which really demonstrates the success of that post-Iron Curtain knowledge transfer.
We do. Slezská Diakony in the Czech Republic, the diaconal arm of the Silesian Evangelical Church, reported over 667 million Czech koruna in revenue for fiscal year 2024.
Which is about 27 million.
Think about the capacity required to manage that kind of budget. It enables them to run over 112 registered social services across more than 70 centers.
Covering everything.
Everything from elder care to specialized youth services. That is massive infrastructure. It requires robust administration, auditing, financial transparency.
And then there's the German example, the Evangelist Mission Heidelberg. It's so structurally integrated into the diacony system that while its total annual revenue isn't always public, its sheer scale is just demonstrated by its operational footprint.
I mean, it employs a staggering 1,695 staff and runs 2 hospitals.
2 hospitals.
The staffing level alone implies a budget likely in the high tens of millions of euros annually. They are not simply a service provider, they are a major regional employer and a critical part of the healthcare system.
Which shows that their work extends far beyond traditional mission activities into core public goods.
Absolutely.
So contrast those giants, then, with the smaller, localized, community-funded missions. Take the Turafmo Vinnevan Foundation in Switzerland.
It's a completely different operational magnitude. It's a modest, highly local operation. It runs a daycare and a food distribution point, funded primarily through the local Protestant Reformed parish support and, project-based fundraising.
Like the art auction.
Right. The sources mention they raised just over 8,700 Swiss francs from a local art auction to support a specific partner in Nigeria. It's important to note both of these scales exist in the same network.
And in the Spanish context, the Misión Evangélica Urbana de Valencia, MEUV, also relies heavily on localized corporate and private donations.
Offering highly direct, street-level aid, showers, food banks, legal advice for the marginalized. They don't publish a consolidated public revenue figure, which suggests a much smaller, highly focused operational scale.
So what does this vast financial disparity imply? What's the takeaway here?
The defining characteristic that connects all these entities, regardless of their size, is their symbiotic relationship with public funding. These organizations are not merely recipients of optional government charity.
They're essential contracted partners of the state.
Integral to the delivery of national and regional social welfare strategies.
Okay, this is where I want to pause and challenge the dynamic a bit. If organizations like Slezská Diakony rely so heavily on public funding, their income is majority public, does that deep reliance on the state dilute that spiritual fortification or the Christian mission identity they talked about in their dual mandate?
That is the essential tension that defines the large-scale missions. It's a constant management challenge.
Or does it, paradoxically, legitimize their work in an increasingly secular policy environment?
The answer, based on their strategic documents, is that it legitimizes their work, provided they maintain extremely high standards of professionalism and transparency. By adhering to the rigorous public reporting and auditing standards, which public contracts demand, they build trust.
I see. So they manage that tension by demonstrating that they are the most effective, most trusted subcontractors for the job.
Exactly. For the state, partnering with these missions is a cost-effective way to reach marginalized populations that state institutions often struggle to access. And for the missions, this deep integration ensures stable, large-scale funding that allows them to move from temporary, reactive charity to systemic, long-term intervention.
And we have concrete evidence of this integration. Let's look again at the Czech Republic. Slezská Diakony's income is majority public.
Right. Their 2024 annual report showed over 328 million koruna came from the Czech Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs.
Plus another 51.7 million from the regional government. This isn't a small grant. This is high-level state funding for the core operation of their services.
And this integration goes right up to the EU level. Eurodiaconia, the Brussels-based network that collaborates strategically with the EAUM, receives a significant operating grant from the European Social Fund Plus program.
We should probably define ESF Plus.
Sure. The ESF Plus is the main European Union mechanism for funding social cohesion projects. It's about fighting poverty, promoting employment, and supporting social integration across the member states.
So by securing grants from this, these organizations position themselves directly within the EU policy framework. They shift from just national partners to European stakeholders.
That's the key.
And in the UK, The Glasgow City mission received a very specific grant of 125,533 from the Scottish government for a rapid rehousing welcome center.
Which is a clear case of partnership. The government is delegating a solution for a specific priority rapid rehousing to a trusted provider. This partnership model is the defining financial characteristic of the large missions.
And this deep integration proves they have the resources and the organizational rigor to tackle truly complex systemic problems.
Which is exactly why their 2025 conference agenda is so insightful. It acts as a strategic barometer of the entire sector's priorities.
Right. The EAUM 2025 conference, hosted in Wrocław, Poland. It has an overall theme, In God's Caring Hands, which signals a theological anchoring in a time defined by what commentators are calling a polycrisis.
And that's a crucial term to understand in this context. The polycrisis isn't just one problem, it's the simultaneous collision and mutually reinforcing nature of several major crises impacting European stability.
Geopolitical instability like Ukraine and Belarus.
Existential climate anxiety among youth, high cost of living inequality, rising political polarization, all at once.
And the seminar topics selected by the EAUM moves squarely beyond traditional material aid and into these systemic complex policy issues.
They do.
Let's start with the immediate geopolitical crisis. Seminar 1, Geopolitics of Compassion, Migration and Borders. This is led by Diakonia, Poland.
And this isn't addressing theoretical migration. This is a direct, acute response to current events, particularly the crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border. Diakonia, Poland is positioned as a frontline humanitarian actor. They're not simply handing out blankets. Their aid is sophisticated and resource-intensive, funded by international partners. They provide cash assistance giving refugees, direct financial support, housing support, and long-term integration services.
So this seminar is about sharing real-time, high-stakes operational lessons from a conflict zone.
Absolutely. The gravity of that work is immense. We are talking about organizations that moved instantly from providing local food aid to managing international logistics for hundreds of thousands of people fleeing war.
It speaks to the organizational muscle they possess.
It does. They leverage their established administrative structures to become essential humanitarian logistics hubs almost overnight. They moved from managing local German government contracts to managing UN partner contracts. This seminar is designed to transfer that high-capacity mobilization model to the rest of the network.
Then moving to Seminar 2, Homelessness, the Complex Approach, which is led by the Glasgow City mission. They are pushing attendees to adopt a complex approach to life situations.
Right. Acknowledging the systemic nature of the problem. This reflects the understanding that modern homelessness is a trauma issue, an addiction issue, a mental health issue, and an economic issue, often all at the same time.
So the focus moves beyond just providing a temporary bed.
Far beyond. It moves to implementing wraparound services, sustained advocacy, accredited skills training, and employment pathways. This requires long-term commitment and significant resource investment.
And the complexity is heightened by intra-European migration, which the EAUM has to manage daily.
That's a critical detail. The Berliner Stat Mission notes that over 50% of the homeless population they serve comes from other Central European countries, often moving west in search of economic opportunities or fleeing poverty.
Which complicates service delivery immensely.
It does. It means the city mission needs staff who can navigate multiple languages, access social security systems in other countries, and manage complex international coordination, not just local resources.
Then we see the major strategic pivot in Seminar 3, Mental Health and Youth, the New Poverty, led by Silesian Diakoni from the Czech Republic. This signals a departure from purely material needs.
This is a major evolutionary step into therapeutic and clinical domains. The focus is specifically on prevention and support for young people facing psychiatric struggles.
And our sources indicate this emphasis is a direct response to gaps left by overwhelmed state systems.
Exactly. Particularly since the acute phase of the financial crisis and migrant crises post-2015, they are stepping in where the state infrastructure is buckling.
So they recognize that in modern Europe, the crisis for the next generation is often psychological and existential.
Precisely. Isolation, anxiety, and psychiatric distress are becoming the new poverty that prevents integration, education, and employment. The missions are moving into providing clinical services to fill that gap.
Seminar 4 then addresses the breakdown of the social contract itself. Social polarization, mending the social fabric. This is led by the Heidelberg City Mission and the Swedish City Mission.
Their focus here is highly analytical and theological. They are tackling the widening gap between rich and poor and the diminishing tolerance towards migrants and minority communities.
So the work involves actively working to bridge these divides through community programming and dialogue.
Yes, and they are searching for a distinctively theological counter-narrative to the political division and segregation seen across Europe.
What does that theological counter-narrative look like in practical terms, like in a city council meeting or a neighborhood discussion?
It looks like using the core Christian mission of reconciliation and holistic care to argue for universal dignity and rights, rather than charity based on merit. When they address policy, they frame their intervention as contributing to peace in our cities, using a faith-based mandate to demand social justice and cohesion in public debate.
Positioning themselves as indispensable voices for the marginalized.
Exactly.
And finally, we have the critical, forward-looking, existential operational challenge, Seminar 5, the diagonal digital divide adapting to the future, led by the Swedish City Mission.
And this is so critical for the future. They acknowledge the internal hurdles, the persistent funding limitations for IT, gaps in staff digital literacy, and the immense data security concerns that come with managing sensitive client data in public partnerships.
Why is this so urgent for them?
Because the strategic goal is to prevent the digital exclusion of the poor. As European governments digitize welfare services, whether it's accessing unemployment benefits, housing registries, or submitting applications, people who are homeless, illiterate, or lack access to reliable technology are shut out of vital resources.
So the Swedish missions, being in one of Europe's most digitized environments, they're leading the effort to teach the network how to become digital bridges for their clients.
Yes, ensuring that technology doesn't become a new barrier to welfare.
The conference agenda truly is a sophisticated barometer. It shows the sector is grappling with everything from humanitarian crisis to technological policy. So let's look at how these strategies manifest on the ground. Let's compare 3 distinct models of city mission operations defined by their national context.
The first is what we can call Model A, the Germanic corporatist giant. This is exemplified by organizations like the Berliner Stadtmission in Germany. And this model is characterized by that deep, necessary integration into the German diacony welfare system we described earlier.
And that integration requires massive administrative scale. The Berliner Stadtmission, founded in 1877, is a monolithic entity. We noted its scale, over 1,055 staff as of 2017.
And they work across multiple complex sectors: families, seniors, disabled people, and the homeless. Their sheer size is reflected in their role in European youth mobility. They actively recruit and manage a large contingent of European Solidarity Corps volunteers.
So young people from across the continent committed to social service.
Right, and what that tells us about their administrative rigor is that they are far from a loose volunteer organization. The application process for these ESC volunteers is rigorous.
Detailed questionnaires.
Detailed questionnaires on personal motivation and development history, and strict adherence to EU funding regulations. This highlights that these are professional institutions with highly standardized administrative processes designed to manage complex social work environments and international staff.
Proving they are qualified to handle major state contracts.
Without a doubt.
So, moving to Model B, the Nordic post-secular innovator, which is embodied by organizations like Stockholm's Stadsmission in Sweden.
Right, and this context is characterized by a highly secularized society, but one with high institutional trust in efficient service providers. They are leaders in social enterprise, using business models to fund social services, and pioneering models like Housing First.
And there's a surprising nugget here that truly demonstrates their unique approach to social cohesion in a pluralistic environment.
The Gudshus, House of God project in Fisksätra. And this is not just some nice interfaith dialogue. It is a profound organizational collaboration that the Stockholm City Mission helped facilitate.
It involves creating shared physical infrastructure between a Lutheran parish, the Muslim Association of Nacka, and the Catholic parish. They are literally building a facility to be shared by diverse religious communities.
And this is critical because it fundamentally shifts the mission's goal from proselytizing to active social architecture. The city mission is facilitating social cohesion not through theological conversion, but by creating physical spaces of encounter third places where different classes, cultures, and faiths meet.
They're providing the logistical and political framework that allows these groups to coexist and collaborate.
Exactly, tackling segregation at its root.
That's a profound move into community shaping, leveraging their neutrality and trust within the welfare system.
It shows the genius of the Nordic model. They managed to maintain their distinct identity while being so indispensable to the creation of social goods that they become the primary facilitator of pluralism rather than a participant in the culture wars.
And our third model is Model C, the crisis responder. We see this clearly in Poland and the Czech Republic.
Right. These organizations spent the post-communist transition filling welfare gaps, and now they're grappling with intense geopolitical crises.
Diakonia Poland's extensive aid for Ukrainian refugees and migrants on the Belarusian border demonstrates their remarkable capacity for rapid mobilization in conflict zones.
They leverage international aid grants. One major project volume alone totaled over $800,000 to provide sophisticated support like cash assistance and rental support. They operate as essential humanitarian logistics hubs with minimal bureaucracy.
And Silesian Diakonia in the Czech Republic exemplifies filling those deep welfare gaps, often created by state resource limitations.
Their focus on adolescent mental health shows them strategically pivoting to where state resources are weakest. They have grown to become a major nonprofit provider of therapeutic and prevention services for youth, indicating a strategic awareness of where the state needs them most.
They're agile enough to shift focus to existential needs when the state remains tied up in classic material aid.
That's the key, their agility.
So this comparison shows the incredible diversity, but the network is unified through its two Brussels-based partners that work together in what we call the ecumenical ecosystem.
And we need to clearly distinguish between EAUM and Eurodiaconia.
It's vital. While they collaborate constantly, they have fundamentally different roles in this ecosystem.
They do.
The EAUM is the practice network.
Exactly. Its focus is entirely on operations, staff exchange, and the practical, on-the-ground implementation of social services. It's the mechanics of how to run a shelter or deliver mental health support, as we saw in the ROCOC conference seminars. It is the coalface organization.
Eurodiaconia, on the other hand, is the advocacy network.
Right. It is strategically based in Brussels to lobby the European Commission and the European Parliament. It produces detailed policy papers on large-scale issues like the European Pillar of Social Rights, in-work poverty, and how to manage a socially just green transition.
They speak the language of EU policy and regulation.
They have to.
So the fact that Heather Roy, the Secretary General of Eurodiaconia, is a key panelist at the EAUM 2025 conference shows a strategic alliance. It's linking that ground-level reality to high-level policy.
This alliance is the genius of the ecosystem. The EAUM members provide Eurodiaconia with the raw, on-the-ground data and detailed case studies, the reality of poverty and exclusion in European cities.
And Eurodiaconia then uses this verified, non-political data to advocate effectively for policy change and secure funding at the EU level.
And this connection ensures that service delivery informs European policy, and policy, in turn, funds better service delivery. It's a feedback loop.
And finally, just to close out the institutional history, we did mention the City Mission World Association, CMWA, earlier.
Yes. The EAUM was historically the European chapter of the CMWA. However, our sources confirm the CMWA's corporate entity has been dissolved or dormant since about 2008.
So the EAUM has clearly continued to thrive.
And it remains the active, dynamic center of gravity for European city mission operations today, setting its own strategic agenda.
So this deep dive has shown us that the EAUM organizations are not static reactive charities, but a dynamic, evolving infrastructure essential to Europe's current and future social welfare landscape.
Yeah, the core finding is that this network represents a significant and successful shift from the 19th century focus on purely material aid, which was often summed up as the soup, soap, and salvation model,
Right.
to sophisticated 21st century systemic social intervention. They are contracted partners, they are professionalized, and they are capable of addressing the complex root causes of modern vulnerability at scale.
And the movement is fundamentally defined by its continued pursuit of that crucial dual mandate, ensuring high-level professional exchange and operational excellence, coupled with maintaining their core spiritual fortification and theological vision in an increasingly secular public square.
This brings us to the concept of the creative minority, which was coined by Christoph Zing. They are not attempting to dominate public life, but are actively shaping community and bridging divides in increasingly pluralistic, secular, and segregated societies.
So they're finding a relevant role as communities of faith, not by retreating, but by providing indispensable social services that nobody else can or will deliver as effectively.
Exactly. They are providing social stability when it is needed most, especially when we look at that 2025 agenda's focus on youth mental health and geopolitical crises. the evolution is accelerating.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought. The inclusion of that diagonal digital divide seminar, it suggests that the modern mission mandate now involves addressing not only the classic challenges of material aid, the soup and soap, but also the non-material existential vulnerabilities.
The psychiatric crises of youth and the technological exclusion of the poor.
So the question for the organizations within the EAUM over the next decade is this. Given their deep integration with state budgets and their commitment to complex social services, will the continued success and operational relevance of these city missions be measured by their proficiency in data security, digital inclusion, and therapeutic services, as much as by the sheer number of hot meals they provide?
It's a challenge that demands continuous innovation at the intersection of faith, policy, and cutting-edge technology.